Díaghuit gach duine, an seachtain seo táimid ag foghlaim faoin Scoil arís. So this week we're learning about the school again, ach dús táimid chun féachán siar in the rudí a foghlaim míimid an seachtain seo caite. So first we're going to look back at the things we learned last week. So last week you learned these subjects. Can you name them for me again? Ivor Hain, English. Go on, give it a try. You should remember this from last week. Ivor Hain, English. Berla, Ivor Doe, Irish. Gaeilge, Ivor Tree, Maths. Mathematic, Ivor a Cahar, Science. Óliacht, Ivor a Cuig, Geography. And remember, this was kind of land science. Tír Óliacht, Ivor a Sé, History. Star, Ivor a Seacht, Music. Ceol, Ivor a Hocht, Drama. Drámaíocht, Ivor a Ní, Learn Together. Foghlaim le chéile, agus Ivor a De, Art. Alien. Now, if you didn't get all of those, I want you to have a scan through them again. Take a minute, and then I'm going to take them away again. So take a minute to scan them again, concentrating on the ones you didn't get. And Tashid Imaha, they're gone. Try and name them again. English. Irish. Maths. Science. Geography. History. Music. Drama. Learn Together. Art. Did you get them all right this time? If you didn't, I'd go back and pause it and try and do it again. So later this week, you're going to be doing a little bit of writing about school. So a little bit later in this video, I'm going to be showing you lots and lots of verbs to do with school that you can use to write sentences. But for right now, let's focus on some easy ones that we know already. So an easy thing you can say about school or subjects is, and you've been learning this one since you were very young, is maithlim, I like. So you could write, if you were finding the more complicated verbs a little bit tough, you could focus on something a little bit easier and you could say, is maithlim berla, I like English. You could say, ní waithlim, I don't like. Ní waithlim alien, I don't like art. Ní waithlim. You could go a little bit more complex and you could say, is maithlim mathematic, ach ní waithlim óliacht. I like maths, but I don't like science. And the last one we could try out is maithlim drámaíocht, ach is fearlam ceol. I like drama, but I prefer music. So those are one or two little sentences that are quite easy, based on is maithlim and ní maithlim, which you know quite well. And that could be something you could include in your writing this week. And the next slide, I'm going to have some verbs that we learned last week about school. And if you were to use those in your writing, it would just be a little bit more complex. It would be you pushing yourself a little harder. And we always like to see that. So let's have a look at these ones. Okay, Anish, táimid chun féachant na bríthre, some of the verbs that we learned last week. And there's some new ones in here as well, but most of them you will have seen an seachtain seo caite. Ivor a Hain, to buy. Canig, Ivor a Doe, to like or enjoy. Tatten, Ivor a Tree, to collect. Bailg, Ivor a Cahar, to wake up. Tuaisig. Iver a cuaig, to hurt or injure. Gurtig. Iver is sé, to prepare. Olvig. Iver a shocked. Now we didn't have this one last week, but you know this one because we talk about it all the time. It's to learn. How do we say to learn? Remember from the other slide, learn together was what? Fáilim. Iver a hocht, to start or begin. Tosig. Iver a ní, to finish or end. Críochnig. Iver a de, to play, like as in a sport, not a musical instrument, to play or compete. Immer. Iver a haindig, to tell. Inish. Again, iver a dóigh, we didn't have this one last week, but you know this one. To write. Scríobh. Agus arís iver a trídeig, ní raibh siad a gcuin an teachtain coilcáte, ach tá sé sin ar eolas agat. You do know this one. Éist. Agus an ceann dearna, the last one, to attend. Freastal. Now I would like you, arís, I'm going to take them away, have a good scan, say them to yourself again, and I'm going to take them away and I want you to see how many you can remember. Give that a try now. You can pause the video and see if you can get them all. Okay, so now we know some of the verbs, and we know from looking at the Aimsir Loireach the last few weeks that in the Aimsir Loireach, which is our present tense, we have to add on different endings. And you also know from the last while that what endings we use depends on which family or which group our verb falls into. So if you look at my table here, you can see I have quail, which means narrow. Can you see the flamingo? So I use the flamingo because a flamingo is skinny. So we have narrow words, and those are words where the vowel E or the vowel I is the last important vowel in the word. Okay, so that's quail. Then you can see the elephant, because he's big and fat. That's leathan, which is broad. And again, those are the ones where the vowels A, O, and U are the important vowels at the end. And you can kind of see that with leathan because it's broad, it's round. These vowels actually have a round looking shape. So that's a good way to remember them. The round vowels are broad and the other ones are narrow. So we can see I have my quail and my leathan, narrow and broad. I also have céad. That means first, and that's why the number 1 is there. So the céad réimniú, the first group, are the ones that mostly have one syllable. So they're kind of an easy one to remember. First, one syllable. Then we have dara, 2, which means second, dara réimniú, the second group. So again, quite easy. Second one, 2 syllables. And you can see that in the list of verbs here, we have some one-syllable verbs and we have some two-syllable verbs. Now it gets a little bit funny. There's two other kind of funny little groups that are what we call exceptions because they don't obey all of the rules. So can you see my picture of Ant-Man? So I've used Ant-Man because there are one or two of these verbs that kind of do a bit of a shrink before we have to do something with them. And you'll see that in a minute. So those are the ones that shrink a little bit when we put our ending on. And the very last group here, I said put Goldilocks, because I always think of Goldilocks and her porridge being perfect just the way it is. And the Goldilocks ones are the ones that don't get any changes really at all. Okay, so we're going to have a look now and see if we can put them in the right place. I'll give you a hint again. All the one-syllable ones go in the céad réimniú. All the two-syllable ones that end with an ig go in the dara réimniú. And then after that, we'll just have to figure it out as we go along because there isn't a kind of a black and white rule for the last ones. So let's have a look. First one, ceannig. Well, first of all, is it quail or is it Latin? Now we remember that it's not the I at the very, very end that matters. We kind of ignore that whole ig section. So let's look at the cian section. And the last vowel there is an A, which is Latin. So this guy is Latin. And how many syllables does he have? That's right, 2. So he's going to go here into the Latin side of the 2-syllable ones. Let's have a look at this next one. Tatin. Does it have 2 syllables? Yes, it does. Does it end with ig? No, it doesn't. So it's not one of these Dara Rame new ones. I'm going to tell you it's actually one of the ones that's going to have a bit of a shrink. I'm going to put it there with my Ant-Man ones. Our next one, Balig. Does it have 2 syllables? Yes. Does it have an ig? Yes. So it's the Dara Rame new. If I took that ig off, if I forgot about that ig, what would my last vowel be? An I. So that makes it quail. Our balig goes into our Dara Rame new quail. Next one, douchig. 2 syllables? Yes. Does it have an ig? Yes, so we know it's the Dara Rame new. Let's forget about the ig and look at the douche bit. What is the last vowel? It's an I. So that makes this quail. Remember, with the ones that have an ig, we get rid of the ig in our minds and we say, what is the last vowel of the bit that's left? Next one, gurtig. Does it have 2 syllables? Yes, it does. Does it have an ig? Yes, it does. So it's Dara Rame new. If I forgot about the ig, if I deleted it, what would my last vowel be? Well, it would be that O, wouldn't it? And that would be Latin. So it goes over here. Next one, olvig, to prepare. Does it have 2 syllables? Yes. Does it have an ig? Yes. If I take off the ig, I'm left with ulv, and there's only one vowel in that, and it is a Latin vowel. So here we go, Dara Rame new Latin. Our next one here is foulum. Does it have 2 syllables? Yes. Does it have ig? No. Aha. So if it doesn't have ig, it's not going to go in our Dara Rame new, which means I have to decide, does it go with the shrinking Ant-Man ones, or does it go with the Goldilocks, just keep it the way it is ones? And I'm going to tell you the answer here is it does go with the Goldilocks ones. With foulum, we don't need to take off anything or mess with the end of the verb at all. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it here with the Goldilocks ones. I can see that the last vowel in this is an I, which is quail. So it goes with my quail ones. All right, halfway there. Tussig, 2 syllables? Yes. Does it have an ig? Yes. So it's Dara Rame new. If I get rid of the ig, I'm left with tuss. And what's the vowel in that? Latin. Okay, next one. Creachnig, 2 syllables? Yes. Does it have an ig? Yes. So it's Dara Rame new. Get rid of that ig and you're left with creach. And my last vowel in creach is O, which is Latin. Okay, we're flying here. Next one, immer, to play. Does it have 2 syllables? Yes. Does it have an ig? No. So it's not the Dara Rame new. So it's either going to be one of my Ant-Man ones, which shrink a little bit, or it's going to be ones that are left just alone. And I'm going to tell you, it's one of the shrinking ones. So it goes in there. Inish. 2 syllables? Yes. Does it have ig? No. Okay, so it isn't a Dara Rame new. It's one of our shrinking ones. Okay, next one. Screeve. Does it have 2 syllables? No, this one actually only has 1 syllable. So straight away I know it goes into my Categorizing new, into my first group, my number 1 group for 1-syllable verbs. And I can see my last vowel there is a nice big round O. So it's going to go into the Latin box. Next one, eisht, listen. Does it have 2 syllables? No, it doesn't. So like screeve, it's going to go up there with the Categorizing new. And what's my very last vowel there? It's an I, a narrow I. So it is quail. And now my very last one, frastal. attend. 2 syllables? Yes. Does it have ig? No. So it's either going to be one of my shrinking Ant-Man ones, or it's going to be a Goldilocks one that just gets left by itself, left all alone, and it's a Goldilocks one. And its last vowel is an A, so it goes in there to the Latin ones. So it's really important when we're learning all of this stuff that we know which group to put our verbs in. Because once I know what group they go in, then I know how to put the ending on them. And in the next slide, we're going to revise what we know about the I'm sure Leufrich endings. Okay, on this slide, we're going to have a look at endings. So we're just going to concentrate on the ending for me, because we know that in the I'm sure Leufrich, instead of using may for me, we actually absorb the may, me part into our verb. So let's have a look here. We're looking at the Scoil, the narrow ones. Categorizing, 1 syllable. Let's have a look at éist. How do I say I listen? Éist im. I just add I am as my ending for me. Éist im. I listen. Now let's look at skriv. How do I say I write? Skriv im. I write. We can see there's a difference here. We've added an A because this one is Latin. We wouldn't leave it I am because that would be Scoil. So have a look for yourself at the difference between éist im for Scoil and skrivim for Latin. Have you got that one? Can you see that difference? Let's move on to Andara Raimnu, and we'll look at the Scoil ones first. So hopefully you remember from when we learned this before that when we're dealing with these verbs that end with ig, that we have to remove the ig. So there, it's gone. And now we add on our ending. Im. So it's dushim, dushim, and balim. I wake up, I collect. Dushim and balim. Okay, so based on that, you can see there's a little difference. The difference between the dushim and the éistim is the fada, and that's why we have that long sound. Dushim. Now, I wonder if you could be really clever and make a prediction for what's going to happen to our Latin group, Cianig, Tusig, Creeknig, Ovig, and Gertig. What do you think is going to happen there? Well, just like the last time, we get rid of our ig. And it's im again, but this time there's an A because this is Latin. So we can't start it with that narrow vowel I. We have to put in a broad A. So it was dushim and balim for the narrow ones. And again, the sound is im. There's just a slightly different spelling. Cianim, I buy. Tusium, I start. Creeknium, I finish. Ulvium, I prepare. Gurtium, I hurt. Now, let's move on to our Ant-Man ones. I put Ant-Man there for a reason because these guys kind of shrink. So it's a little bit of an odd one, so pay attention. Look at the second syllable in tatin, the second syllable in immer, and the second syllable in inish. So those second syllables would be in, ear, and ish. And look what happens. Do you see what happened? We just shorten it up a bit. We just take out that little vowel. Okay, so they're shortened now. And now let's look at the ending. Again, it's the same ending as we get for dushim and balim, because these guys have 2 syllables as well. The difference of what happened here was we had no ig to remove, so instead we just shortened up by taking out a vowel. So we've got tatnium, I like or enjoy. Imrium, I play or compete. Inshium, I tell. Okay, so hopefully if you look at the chart, you can see some similarities. You can see going from éistim to skrivum, I just add an A. From dushim to cianium, I just add an A. You can see your tatnium has the same ending as your dushim because they both have 2 syllables and they're both broad. I don't have any in here in the broad Latin box for Ant-Man, for the shortened ones, but an example here would be lour, which is to speak, would become laurium, and it would have an A. It would have the same ending as cianeum. Now let's look at our very last ones, foulam and frastal. We said they were Goldilocks, which means they're fine just the way they are, just like Goldilocks' last bowl of porridge was just right. So they're fine just the way they are. So what that means is we don't do any messing around with the main part of the verb, even though they're two syllables, and all the other two-syllable verbs we have to do a bit of changing. But these are the Goldilocks ones. So even though they're two syllables, we're not messing around with the main part of the verb. We just put the ending on. Foulamim and frastalium. And we can see the foulamim, it gets the same ending as tatnium and douchium because it's narrow. And frastalium gets the same ending as cianeum, tussium, creicneum because it's broad. Okay, so on the next slide, this was just for me. I listen, I wake, I collect, I enjoy, I play, I tell, I learn. And on the next slide, I'm just going to show you what it looks like for all the other people, for you, he, she, and we. And maybe when you're doing your worksheet this week, you might pause it on the last slide. Pause the video on the last slide, and then you can have a look at that, and that will help you with your worksheet. Okay, so let's go on to the last one now. Okay, so I'm just going to leave this here for you to have a look at. But let's go through it together first. In the Categorizing, let's look at éist. It's narrow. So we already did éistim on the last slide. Then we have éistin. So we use éistin for tu, she, shiv. For you, listen, he listens, she listens, you lot over there listen. You could also use this for a person. So you could say éistin Nile. You could say éistin on moonshore. And then the last one here is éistimij, which is we listen. We listen. Let's look at scriv. Quite similar. The only difference here is that it's A is the focus, okay? So scrivam with an A, I write. Scriven tu, she, shiv, Nile, on moonshore, those people write. Scrivamij, we write. Okay, let's look at Darraimnu. Again, we did do Shiam on the last slide, which was I wake. So again, for all the other people like you, he, she, the teacher, the dog, your auntie, it's do Shian. Do Shian tu, she, shiv. And for we, our last one, for we wake up, do Shiamij. Do Shiamij. If we look at the broad ones, the sound is the exact same, but now we have A as our focus. We have a broad focus. So it's ulvium, I prepare. Ulvian tu, she, shiv. You, he, she, you lot, prepare. And our last one, ulviamij, we prepare. Let's look at our Ant-Man ones, the ones that get that little vowel plucked out to shrink them down. So I've done taten, which is to enjoy. So tatnium, you can see the I from tat in, that I has been whipped out. So it's tatnium, I enjoy. Tatnian tu, she, shiv. You, he, she, you lot enjoy. And tatniamij. I told you in the last slide that I was going to have an example of a broad one. So it's lower, Labhai-or, which is to speak. And you can see here that AI in the second syllable has been whipped out, and we've shortened it up, we've shrunk it like Ant-Man to get laurium, I speak. Laurian tu, she, shiv. You, he, she, you lot speak. And our last one, lauriamij. Okay, and you'll hopefully notice that these endings are the same as ulvig, because they're broad too. And now on to our last group, the Goldilocks ones, which are just right, so we don't need to do any messing around with the main part of the verb. Faulamium, I learn. Faulamian tu, she, shiv. You, he, she, you lot learn. And our last one, faulamiamij. And the very, very last group, frastal, to attend. So you would say frastalium Shelleybanks. I attend Shelleybanks. So frastalium for me, Frastalian tu she shiv for you, he, she, you lot, your teacher, the fox. Frastalian on fox Shelley Banks, the fox attends Shelley Banks. And our very last one, Frastalia Meej, we attend Shelley Banks. So I know that that's a lot of information, but it's not new information because a lot of this is stuff that you have been learning over the last few weeks. My advice to you now, when you're doing your work this week, pause it on this last one, on this last slide, and when you look at the words, the verbs that you have to change in your worksheet, you can go, okay, well, is that verb one like eish? Because if it is like eish, then I need to put on these endings. Or does this one look like tatten? Because if it looks like tatten, I need to put on these endings. So pause it on this and do your first worksheet that way. And maybe when you go onto your second worksheet, you won't need to watch it like this again. Okay, so good luck with that, and I hope you get on well. If you have any questions, just send a message to me or to your teacher.